It all starts here, though. The crunch time begins now. Why don't you take us through the track that we're going to be seeing today in the Nations Cup, Jimmy?
Oh, I'll do my very best, and where other than to have a great race than at Mount Panorama, aka Bathurst. Got to make sure to drill Bathurst into your head, James. Make sure you're saying it right this time, yeah? So, let's talk about Mount Panorama, shall we? 6-kilometre long circuit. 520 feet of elevation change between the bottom and the top. Absolutely ridiculous. Only something you can see from the onboards, and we'll show you plenty of that as the race goes on. And of course, it has some great Gran Turismo associations, including the fact that in 2015, 2 GT Academy graduates, Wolfgang Reep and Florian Strauss, won the Bathurst 12 Hours in a Nissan GTR. So your lap starts down there. You can see there's a little line at the start-finish straight, a rather small straight compared to the rest of the circuit. You go through Hell Corner, T1, all the way up Mountain Straight to Griffins, which is a very fun, very difficult long right-hander. Then you come up to 3 and 4, up to the cutting. Now your climb really begins up the hill, and you're aiming for the walls either side of the circuit up the hill. There is absolutely no room for error, up until T10, which is Skyline, a very fast left-hander, and then you go back down the mountain. The descent from T11 down to Forest Elbow. Very easy to get things wrong down there, seeing it's a very rhythmical section. Then on to Conrod Straight, a little bit of a chance for a breather, but also a good chance to slipstream, so don't take it too easy before coming through the chase and preparing yourselves for the heavy braking zone at T21. You then make your way out of that very difficult acceleration zone down to T23, Murray's Corner, and that is the end of your lap.
It's only 21 drivers there at the start, Jimmy, so missing 3, unfortunately. But if you didn't get the impression, viewers, that the Ford GT was popular, well, goodness me, I reckon that's about 70% of this field that is filled out by the American muscle.
Well, at least we can say we have a fair race in that aspect, can't we? But here we are, just holding their tyres up now, getting ready to take the start. Of course, first lap around here, very important, very crucial to establish track position early on, given just how difficult it is to overtake around here. We have IOF Racing leading us off with Def Sun and Nico R in the background. Brazilian leading a Canadian, leading a Chilean. Not a bad field if you ask me. So here we go then.
So just building up now. A rolling start, I'd argue, almost a little bit more difficult than a standing start. You have to control the pack. You have to know where to catch out your opponents. Of course, we're awaiting that final countdown. Here it comes now, and the planes, they soar overhead, and Racing 17 soars towards Hell Corner here as we begin this 25-minute Nations Cup race at Bathurst. We had an incident in the EMEA region. Oh, goodness me, already the 14th car, the Academy 2013 car, off into the gravel, and straight to the back of the field it goes. But overall, I feel a very nice and clean start already as Nico R looking to press this advantage into Def Sun 96, heading through Griffin's Corner. Then look at Racing 17. A little bit of wiggle on exit brings those two behind straight back into play. But now we're heading into the top of the circuit as Nico R gets very close to the wall, takes an extra wide line up through the cutting. And as I say, very tight up the top end here. Sparks flying off as doors scrape along the wall. It is so tight here at Bathurst, and believe you me, look at that, another hit of the wall from Nico R. People on the ragged edge already, Jimmy.
Not taking it easy at all around here. Why would you? These are the top 21 drivers right now in the Americas region. Def Sun and Nico making their way down the dipper now. Great piece of course. This is where gravity becomes a bit of an enemy down here because, of course, when you're going downhill, the brakes don't seem to work quite as well. But anyway, here's Def Sun making his way through Forest Elbow. Gets nice and close. Some guys even hitting it. Even the background, I think that was CRT Didico having a little bit of an oversteering moment coming on to Conrod. Now we're looking at the top AMG in the field. What sort of straight line speed? You've got the comparison down in the bottom right-hand corner here to give you an idea of straight line speeds. Looks like the Ford has the legs down here, coming through the chase into a very heavy braking zone that actually goes uphill right at the very end, so you can brake all that little bit later. Very close to Didico, the Brazilian, there in front. Otherwise, aside from GT Academy 2013, it seems that everyone had a fairly clean start. Well done, guys. Better than the Europeans.
So at the end of lap 1 then, it is still Racing 17 who leads from pole. Defsun, Nico R, Didico, and Lloyd's Elite there rounding out the top 5, and doing well there is Lloyd in particular, using that Mercedes. Further down the order, it looks like Racing Kings had a bit of an off, unfortunately, going right to the very back. But going up the mountain straight once again, Racing just looking to get a bit of an advantage here now. Defsun, it's not like he's under super pressure, but he's keeping a keen eye. Nico R was so punchy on the first lap, Jimmy. You get the feeling that the Chilean, if you were to give him an opportunity, he will pounce on it.
I mean, whilst this is a sprint race, and that is sort of the mentality you should take into these races, is take every opportunity you can, it's Bathurst. So I think it's better to get into a little bit of a rhythm, really. Find where you're comfy with the car. As you're going up the hill, you're driving at the walls. You go, right, how close can I get to that? And you get as close as possible. When you start seeing the sparks come off the back of the car, that's when you start coming maybe a couple of inches back instead. But they're really exploring the circuit and just seeing how much of it they can use as we go back downhill again. Very heavy load on the front tyres down here, so this will actually reward drivers who are a bit smoother on the brakes, a bit smoother on the tyres. Look at the AMG on the back of the GT here coming down the hill. That's Lloyd's Elite chasing down CRT Didico. Really good over the top of the mountain, but I think he loses out in a straight line. Let's see if he does. He's in the slipstream now, locked on to the back of Didico, the Brazilian. Foot, probably both feet on the throttle at this point for a bit more extra speed, and the Ford GT looks like it has the legs, but even with a slipstream, the gain is minimal. He will not be close enough, I don't think, for a move coming out of the chase.
And he's got to be careful as well, because Gumball CGT just filtering in behind. He's dragging Windfire for company as well. And I do get the feeling that this Mercedes is almost going to feel like the weakling in the school playground, unfortunately.
He's living my life.
First day at school, doesn't quite know what's happening. And doing a very nice job indeed is the Canadian to hold. To just hold in general up there in P5. Oh, a little bit of lag there in the braking zone as well. And I guess actually that's really something that we don't see too much at the top level of e-racing, Jimmy, but it still does happen. In virtual racing, we have our own mechanical failures, and most of the time, unfortunately, it's called the internet.
Of course, it's all part of it, and it's become a lot better, even in my my time as a sim racer, back when I started back in mid-2012 doing it properly. Yeah. Back then, very hard to have a race, even then. Now it's a lot better. And of course, GT Sport, I think, for the most part, has some pretty decent netcode. We're just seeing now, we're on board with Gumball, giving you an idea of what it's like to climb this mountain. Look at Lloyd's Elite, just getting very close. Well, that AMG, wonder if he's running traction control or not. By the looks of it, he isn't. He's sliding all over the place. And of course, there being increased tyre wear in this round, we have a multiple, I think it's ×6 on the tyre wear around here at Bathurst. So that essentially means that 1 lap on your tyres is like 6 laps tyre wear. So you find the car isn't the same lap after lap. It changes every lap because of that amount of tyre wear, which is a unique challenge that you won't find in the real world. No, absolutely not. And I'm getting a little bit worried about Lloyd's Elite. I guess I'm feeling more worried on the sake of Gumball, potentially. A little bit, oh yeah, well, I was going to say it's a little bit off-putting, but he's made his way past, along with Windfire, who picks up a penalty. In the meantime, let's have a little look at what happened here. So they're heading down, a little bit of contact, and then into the Forest Elbow. Lloyd's Elite just completely slowed up, whether it's internet-related or not. Goodness me, talking about bullying, he was muscled into the wall. The two Americans make their way past, although Gumball CGT's gone off again, and Lloyd's Elite's back up into 6th, and now it's all changing again. Wow. And goodness me, I'm really worried about his connection, honestly. And I wonder, is he pulling into the pits? I believe so. I think he's just pulled off the course altogether. Yeah. I think he's gone, right, okay. That is a good thing to do. I mean, it's sad to have to put out the race that way, but that is fantastic sportsmanship there from Lloyd to go, right, okay, I'm having these issues, let me just pull to the back, let everyone else through. and we'll just go from there and see if it improves. So good on you there, Lloyd. A shame it had to end that way, but that is racing for you. Not always the way you want it to go. We are now back with the Chilean, Nico R. Been around in this series for a while, especially in America. You can see the amount of camber he's running on the front of that Ford. I'm surprised the tyres last that long. Of course, when you run more negative camber, that is when the bottom of the wheel sticks out more than the top of the wheel. You increase your tyre wear, but you do get faster cornering speeds. Wow, Nico! Save of the century there, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, I thought we were watching Gran Turismo, not Formula D.
You know, I'm just looking at these drivers in general, Jimmy, and I mean, looking at the end of racing there as he heads through the dipper, they are ridiculously aggressive. And I know we were talking pre-race about, oh, well, you know, they might have to make a pit stop. It depends on the pace. These guys are not just legging it. They are not leaving anything out to dry. We are absolutely going to see a pit stop. I guess the question is, how early at this point, because there is no mercy on the tyres. Racing, especially 2.6 seconds clear of the rest of the field.
Well, I just wanted to mention that it's actually ×9 tyre wear. It's my mistake. I guess I got the number the wrong way around.
It was ×6 on the fuel, wasn't it?
Yeah, ×5 on the fuel.
×5 on the fuel.
So I got nothing right. But ×9, so even more tyre wear. So that little opposite lock moment there for Nico is going to cost him quite a lot of rear tyre wear. So I'm sure he's kicking himself there. Now we're on board with 5 Ziggin in the other AMG behind the Viper of Mr. McQueen 91. I thought he'd be driving a Porsche if it was in McQueen, but I guess not. Coming now down to Murray's Corner, last corner of the track. And if you go straight on there, you actually go to the, I think, the town near Bathurst.
Yes,
so,
I think so, yeah.
I'm not sure if the town's actually called Bathurst or not. But yeah, don't go down there. It's not part of the racing line.
Well, in this particular case, you'd also find a wall. But actually, for 5 Ziggin, it's a pretty interesting situation because he's got 2 of his teammates up ahead of him. Of course, that's kind of the general thing that you'll see these GT players do, is they'll include their team affiliation in the front of their name. So those 3 guys, they're not called FT. You know, there's not that much of a coincidence. They are with the team FT and trying to mount a joint assault on TRL Doodle, who we're actually on board now, and he's in a very interesting position because he's behind Windfire, who was caught up in that whole incident with Lloyd's Elite. He managed to get past, but I imagine it was in contact of getting past that he picked up a penalty. Now, he has to serve that at some point during the race. He might be able to do that on pit lane entry or exit. The general strategy is try and get all of it out of the way at the end of the race. I'm sure that Doodle and the guys behind him, they may be thinking pit stop strategy to try and overtake him on track. And another person that we failed to look at was Project D1. He was probably the biggest benefactor in that early incident, moving his way up to P6 and in a very healthy position indeed as we head towards the 15-minute marker.
So you're nearly 10 minutes elapsed, or very nearly there. Looks like at the moment IRF Racing having a very fun time of things. 3 seconds clear of the nearest competitor, which is Defsun. We're currently looking at CRT Didico right now, making his way down the straight. Looks like the top 3 have broken away from the rest of the pack. There's 6 seconds now actually separating 3rd and 4th position. Gumball still in the hunt though, still keeping CRD Didico honest, which is very important around here. Here is Defsun, the Canadian, in yet another Ford GT. Now, of course, you tend to see, because we are in the Nations Cup and you do have a free car choice, of course, different, because the cars, they are balanced, but the cars are inherently different in how they weigh, their layout, etc. You do tend to see one car be faster at one track, and because it's free choice, everyone jumps on it and goes, cool, I'll have that. Of course, there is accounting for taste as well. We do see some people in Vipers and AMGs. We saw a Porsche in the last race as well. Some people have their favourite car they want to drive, but I think the competitive guys all sort of agree, right, this car's going to be quick, we'll take this. And that's why we see such a large amount of Fords in this race. See IOF making its way up the mountain once more, giving us a little drift for good measure. Thank you, IOF, appreciate that, mate.
Yeah, racing 17 there. This is probably one of the biggest gaps that we've seen all evening across both, or I should say all 3 races at this point, which we have covered there. Back in P9, oh, Hell's Fire has had a little bit of a of a burn. He's moved down 2 positions and he's allowed McQueen and 5 Ziegen to move up. But unfortunately, in doing so, McQueen has picked up a penalty. And so it's a curious situation again, Jimmy, because these 3 are in a trio. I think Hellsfire is a little bit more worried about Faku Dudu behind him. But surely it makes sense at this point to allow 5 Ziegen through. You don't want to be holding each other up too much.
No, but at the same time, you are all racing each other. It's, I've seen a lot of guys do that out of the elbow, just getting a little bit too impatient on the throttle. And again, if you wanted an answer as to whether these guys are running traction control or not, there it is. Definitely not through there. Something I wanted to say, though, of course, is that the reason I think we're seeing Racing 17 and DefSun starting to move away from the rest of the field is because Bathurst is the kind of circuit that really rewards brave driving and knowledge of the circuit. You have to know where you can push, where you can't push, and here we are. Interesting, our first stop of the race, and it's our leader, followed in by DefSun. Will Nico do the same? Yes, they do. This just about lines up with the halfway marker, but all coming in now. I think this is the everyone's blinked. Okay, so are we going to have anyone stay out and try something different? Let's have a look. Everyone's coming so far, making their way past the pit lane. Looks like the entire field is coming in. Pure Cry, I think, maybe has gone through, as has Outlaw Quadrant. So a couple of the guys lower down have taken the gamble, but it's not going to be enough. Racing 17 still comes out in the lead. That's how far ahead he was. So that is perfect for Racing 17. No drama, out again. And here is Pure Cry, giving a little bit of a nudge to DefSun, saying, I'm not going to pass you, but I'm going to give you a little bump draft down the straight to help you out. Let's hope I didn't give him a penalty now. Yeah,
Pure Cry and an Outlaw Quadrant. Important to note, they have not pitted yet. They have stayed out and they find themselves in a very precarious position. I don't think Pure Cry is going to be giving DefSun a little bit of trouble, but look at Nico R.
Oh, this is bad for Nico R, because he's stuck in traffic now.
Yeah, and there's no reason for Outlaw to move out the way, and oh my goodness, look how slow he is up the hill in comparison to Nico R. This is wrecking the Chilean's race, and I know that he was comfortably in P3, and actually one of his saving graces perhaps is that 90% of the field came in, and so it's not like he's got any undercut to worry about, but maybe he does have his car to worry about. At this stage, you're far enough ahead of P4, net P4 I should say. I know he's going to be frustrated by this, but at the same time, he's just got to be patient because there's no way through.
That's just part of the thing. Part of the thing, as you said, Outlaw Quadrant doesn't need to move over whatsoever. He's completely within his rights to defend the position. Of course, he'll probably be in this race, this lap even, and that'll be a Nico pass, but he would have lost 2-3 seconds there.
Yeah.
Because essentially these guys are on new tyres, whereas Outlaw Quadrant is on tyres that have 9 times tyre wear over 7 laps. Do the maths, that's 63 laps of tyres around here, around Bathurst.
Sounds like pain.
Yes. Yes, it does. That's how I punish myself on a long weekend, to go around Bathurst on bad tyres.
It's they're going to be screaming like some ungodly spirit that's not been laid to rest. Either way, Pure Cry, those tyres aren't going to be screaming anymore. He's into the pits, Outlaw Quadrant's into the pits, and so the natural order of things is resumed. But look at Nico R, whereas before he was about a second or so behind DefSun. Now he's 3.2 seconds behind DefSun, so bang on the money there, 2 seconds or so lost in that midfield session. But out of all of this, Racing 17 has been able to open up the gap by yet another second. The Brazilian in dominant form here.
Does seem to be a bit of a wider spread in the Americas race than we had in the European Middle Eastern region earlier on. Here comes TRR Dudu looking to the outside of Griffin's, not really overtaking the spot to see if he can get it done. No, he can't. Tucks in behind Project D1 here. Now the cutting, you can get past if you've got the inside line. Will he dive to the inside? He has a look at it. No, not quite. Project D1 comes across. Now in the background we have Windfire and McQueen, both with penalties there, so maybe they aren't thinking about pulling any punches. I've got to say, Windfire, that is the only acceptable time to use a Golf livery on a Ford GT. Or a Porsche, but we won't get into that.
I do like Golf liveries though. We may have to have a disagreement after the race,
We're going to have to get a new commentator, I'm
afraid. Well, goodbye everyone, I'm off. But yeah, it's an important point you bring up because they don't want to be getting
How?
They don't want to be getting like that, basically.
How did he keep that? I thought he was in the wall several times there. McQueen showing that whilst the Viper is somewhat unwieldy, he's just about managing to keep it there. As in the background, that was how did Hellfire go through there and 5 seconds let him through? Or was there a mistake in the background? That looked messy, but anyway, cars now back together again. 4 cars line astern, 6th to 9th in your picture now. Let's see how this unfolds.
It's still relatively quick, and of course the penalties they still have to play out there. Look, you can see Windfire there. Oh wow, that's really, it's half dangerous, yeah, because I understand what Windfire was trying to do. He's trying to serve part of that penalty on the back straight. That said, McQueen is directly behind you, Jimmy. That's not, well, it's forced McQueen into braking himself, and okay, that sort of helped him in the way of serving some of that penalty, but either way, if you're going to brake, do it offline.
You got to do that, and you got to check your mirrors as well, especially when you're racing someone. You go, you know what, I'm going to just get off the throttle now, because then they're going to run you over, and that'll be your race done. But luckily, they just about came out of that in one piece. We're now back with Nico R, who has actually caught DefSun. This is surprising given how much Nico R was held up. Was there a mistake from DefSun last time around? Because he seems to have fallen back a bit from racing. He's now down to 6 seconds. He was 3 or so before.
I was going to say, Nico's gained 2 seconds there.
Something's happened there,
and DefSun's lost 2 seconds. So put 2 and 2 together and you probably get 4. Probably. I don't know. I was never good at maths in my day. In my day? Goodness me, I'm not an old man. Nico R, let's focus on the racing. That's a better idea. He actually, this couldn't have come at a better time because we're into the final 7 minutes now. So, you know, we're there and we're in that point of the race where we're just going hell for leather. We know that we can use the tyres until the end of the race. And more importantly for him, he's got a target to aim for. And it's kind of understated in racing how motivating a car close to you can be in the grander scheme of things.
100%, especially towards the end of the race. It's much easier to follow than it is to lead. I can say that now. Look at this difference in speed here. I think maybe DefSun's running it a little bit lean. Here comes Nico R. He's gained about half a second there just on the Conrod straight, heavy on the anchors. Just nibble the curb on the inside like a nice little cheese board and then bring yourself round to the right-hander underneath the Armoural Bridge. He is so close to the back of DefSun now. Might even have a go at Murray's. No, not quite close enough. Why would you do it there when you can save it for Mountain Straight and Griffin's Corner? So now another lap completed. Nico right on the back of DefSun. Here we are, Hell Corner. Let's see how they manage this. DefSun through there nicely using all the Astro on the exit, and now it is Ford versus Ford, equal machinery. Nico the Chilean versus DefSun the Canadian. Nico pulls out to the right nice and early. Lets DefSun know what's going to happen. So I'm taking this move. Thank you very much, sir. The move is already done before we get to the corner. Nico up into 2nd position.
Whatever happened to DefSun, I do wonder whether he picked up any damage. Look at that again. So wiggly on the exit of Griffin's, hitting the wall, although Nico responds with some nice sparks flying off the right side of his car. That is a move that has been coming for the last lap or so, finally completed in a perfect place as well before this infield up the hill section. Again, Nico really hanging loose on the edge there, but he's made the pass. That's what matters. Another man who's made a pass is McQueen. He's made his way past Windfire back in P7 and P8. He's still got that penalty, but he's on a charge. He's right on the back of Project D1 now.
Yeah, it looks like he's been bouncing off the wall, something fierce, and that Viper, if the paint job is anything to go by at this point. But yes, he does have Project D1 in his sights, that grumbly V10, very distinctive Viper noise that we all love oh so much. Wow, that's not an overtaking spot, nearly runs into the back of Project D1. I think D1 there just got it wrong going down the hill, and McQueen went, oh, okay, but then very quickly had a second thought of that. Right. Let's see what this V10 Viper has in a straight line. Project D gets all sorts of wrong. Contact! And then now they're both sideways. Looks like Project D1 has just about survived. Will that be more of a penalty? That's going to allow Windfire to move back through again. There he is now. He's going to have the draft and the overspeed. He's going to go up to 6th place. There he goes, 6th place. And McQueen is down to 9th. Wow!
What a bizarre... Oh, look at Hellfire! He's going to throw it up the inside and say, "Oi, why are you having this party without me?" let me change that. You are having this party with me, Hellfire.
It's not over yet, James.
No.
D1 going to inside the McQueen. They're side by side coming down to Murray's corner. No contact. Looks like D1's, no, sorry, Hellfire's is put into the wall. McQueen, bigger penalty. It has all gone off here. We're not even on the last lap yet. Project D1 takes 7, and somehow Windfire probably shrugging at his wheel, thinking, how have I got into 6? Something has just happened and I'm now 6. This is great.
Bizarre. Further up the road, look at that. Gumball CGT's made his way past Didico. All kicking off here in the final 5 minutes here at Bathurst. The benefactors of that, Dodgelam and NZ moving up to 10th and 9th respectively. The FT squad shuffled out the top 10, but Gumball, big move for him, of course, without a penalty. Def Sun, probably a little bit too far up the road. He's actually gained a penalty in the time that we've not been with him. But 5 seconds, 6 seconds is a big enough gap to serve it without too much worry. Speaking of not too much worry, Racing 17 has been untouched this entire race. His lead is up to 9.4 seconds. What an incredible performance here from the Brazilian.
The funny thing is, he doesn't know any of this stuff going on behind him. He's just like, la, 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 doing my laps. And of course,
Sunday drive.
It's working well for him. He's now 10 seconds clear of the field. But I think I know what happened, James. I made the mistake of saying that this race was carbon in the European race, and the American guys went, hang on. What's this Brit guy saying about us? And then suddenly, all hell breaks loose. It's far from over. We are coming on to what will now probably be the penultimate lap, because it depends when he crosses a line.
It's going to be close, isn't it?
It's going to be very close. If he crosses a line with about 2:05, 2:04 to go, it'll probably be the last lap. So here we go, across the line. Wow, he might lift off towards the end.
That's what I'm saying. Like it might literally be worth.
I think this will probably be the last lap at this point. We'll keep an eye on that, and you'll see on your screen as well when the final lap is shown. Wow,
Whoa.
5 Sigan and Project D1 coming together. Looks like 5 Sigan just absolutely sent it at the end of the chase. Here comes Dodge Lam and lots of New Zealand's NZ, and solid 5 Sigan. I think serving his penalty now. I mean, we just caught the end of that, but it looks like a little bit of hip and shoulder there from 5 Sigan.
Someone forgot to tell me that the fireplace has been turned on, because goodness me, the heat has been ratcheted up so many times. It's ridiculous. It's still summer, lads. Come on, goodness me. The biggest benefactor, I mean, the FT lads, they were all outside the top 10, and now there's half of them is 1.5. Def Sun in the wall, though.
He is struggling on tyres. That's what's happening right now. That's why you're seeing Nico drive away from him. He just can't get this car around the mountain. You've got one more lap, Def Sun. All you've got to do is keep it on the black stuff now and out of the big walls either side. You don't want to be touching those. Again, IOF Racing 17. He's well up. He's just coming down to the Forest Elbow now. Here is Nico. Oh, that is a gap. Forest Elbow to here is a gap from first to second place. And there is our leader right now coming down Conrad Straight for what may be the last time. I'm sure he's aware that timing's fairly close as well.
Yeah.
But we'll have to wait and see. And bear in mind, James, 5th to 7th all have penalties.
I'm struggling for words at the end of this race. Honestly, mad end as Nico are. There's no Racing 17 in sight. That is because he's up at the front. Probably worth actually going on board with him now, because, like you say, he has enough of a gap to slow down. He might not need it, to be fair, as we enter the final 5 seconds here. He rounds the final corner,
I think we're just...
Oh, he'll be fine.
I think this is just final lap. Here we go, final lap. So IOF Racing comes across the line, takes the checkered flag almost. Oh, that was just mathematically perfect. He goes, right, okay, I'm done now. I'm finished racing. I'm done with my 12-second lead. Here comes Nico R taking second position from Def Sun 96. He'll just be glad to get out of the car after this, I think. And that'll be Gumball probably coming home in 4th. There it is. Good race by Gumball. There's Windfire in that Golf Ford GT serving his penalty. He'll put over to the left of the circuit to serve that. No, he won't. He'll just go across the line. Dodge Ram does that. Is that going to cost Windfire? No, it's not. Okay, so
we're getting so many people serving their penalties. So it's McQueen 8th, solid 9th, Didico rounding out the top 10. Hell's Fire, after all of that, comes home P11. Lloyd's Elite Do you remember Lloyd's Elite and his internet troubles at the beginning of the race? He comes home P12. What a recovery race there. And in fact, I noticed that we are down a driver, so someone retired along the way as well. Mental race, mental Nations Cup race, but the master of Bathurst, undisputed in the Americas region, racing 17. What a performance that was.
Yeah, a fantastic race from Racing 17. Just made it look easy out there, and that's what a good driver does. He lulls you into a full sense of security and goes, you can do this if you want to. And then you go give it a try and realise that Bathurst is actually the world's most expensive pinball machine. So IOF Racing, great job by him. And here comes our last finisher, Nacho. Not the race he would have wanted, but again, a round of applause for finishing here at Mount Panorama. Finishing any race at Bathurst is an achievement, in my opinion.
Couldn't agree more. And so, victory then for the Brazilian. For Brazil, Racing 17. A brilliant performance there in the Ford GT. And that is by far and away the most dominant victory that we have seen all evening long, Jimmy. And if he is taking part in the Manufacturers Series later on tonight, what a confidence boost that is.
100%. You can't ask for a more perfect race as a driver. All you want to do as a driver is not be anonymous.
Yeah.
You don't want anyone to know you've even been there, of course, until you get to the podium and you're on the top step. That's the idea, of course, and you very rarely get those races, so I'm sure Racing 17 has a big smile on his face right now. But I guess we should talk about the movers and shakers. And I guess I think the luckiest person of this race was probably Defsun 96. I say lucky. Sorry, it was Nico that got held up by the late pitting car, wasn't it? But Defsun obviously struggling a lot with tyres. But the key thing is he did enough in the early part of the race to give himself a gap to be able to manage that, and still even finished with 4 seconds over Gumbel despite those problems.
Yeah, and considering that he's points leader as well in such a close competition at the top of the Americas standings, I think he will be feeling very lucky indeed. Almost as lucky as Gumbel, who had a very quiet race in general as well, ahead of the mosh pit of madness behind pretty much everyone, I'd say, from Windfire in 5th all the way down to Project D1 and 5Z. I mean, look at where they finished up, 14th and 15th. They were both in the top 10 with 7 minutes to go of that race. Everything changed around so rapidly, and I do wonder whether a big contributor in that was how aggressively those guys were running the tyres. It was to the very ragged edge, and looking back in hindsight, it's no surprise that incidents started to, you know, really pick up in consistency.
The problem is in that sort of race, especially at Bathurst, is you get a little bit impatient.
Yeah.
You find yourself stuck behind maybe a slower car going over the mountain. And in some of these cases, especially in 5 Ziggin, who is in an AMG, who is a little bit slower in the straight line, goes, right, I'm bored of being stuck behind this Ford. I'm going to send it down the bottom of Conrod and see what happens. And what tends to happen is you get a bit overzealous. You're throwing up the inside. You realise far too late you aren't going to stop. That's what happened. We saw 5 Ziggin hit another car, whack them off a circuit, gave himself a big old penalty, and pretty much ended his race there and then.